Elliot, I just had to kick you out of the room because you were getting a sneak peek at my story. So we just left off where Henry was pretty upset because he thought that his master was going to set him free. But instead the master gave Henry like an object to the master's son. Later that day, Henry watched a bird soar high above the trees. Free bird, happy bird, Henry thought. Henry said goodbye to his family. He looked across the field. The leaves swirled in the wind. This seems like a really, really sad part, right? So basically what's happening here is Henry has to say goodbye to his entire family. Henry is being sold or given away to the master's son. And so a lot of times when people were enslaved, they didn't get to stay with their family members. They were forced away from them, which is really sad. So Henry here, a small child, right, not very old, has to leave his family to go work somewhere else. Think about how that would feel to be forced away from your family. It's really sad. Henry worked in his new master's factory. He was good at his job. "Do not tear that tobacco leaf," the boss yelled at the new boy. He poked the boy with a stick. If you made a mistake, the boss would beat you. Aww, there's little Henry. And there he is here. Looking pretty upset, pretty sad. I'm sure he misses his family a lot. Henry was lonely. One day, he met Nancy, who was shopping for her mistress. They walked and talked and agreed to meet again. Henry felt like singing, but slaves didn't dare sing in the streets. Instead, he hummed all the way home. Why do you think enslaved people were not allowed to sing? It's kind of sad, right? We think about our lives, and we're allowed to sing whenever we want to. But enslaved people were not allowed to sing. They weren't allowed to celebrate. They weren't allowed to know how to read, right? So they didn't have much freedom. Months later, Henry asked Nancy to be his wife. When both their masters agreed, Henry and Nancy were married. Soon there was a little baby, then another, and another. Henry knew they were very lucky. They lived together even though they had different masters. But Nancy was worried. Her master had lost a great deal of money. "I'm afraid he will sell our children," she said. Henry sat very still. So Henry grew up and got married to Nancy. They fell in love and had 3 children. But Henry and Nancy were still enslaved people. They were owned by a white person and were treated like property, like things instead of people. So Nancy was really scared because the white person that owned her lost a lot of money. And so Nancy was afraid that her owner, her master, was going to sell her kids, take away her kids. And so she was worried. She was very worried. And I think Henry was too. Henry worked hard all morning. He tried to forget what Nancy had said. So Henry's worried. And think about it, Henry has been through this already. He was separated from his family when he was little. So I'm sure that makes him worried. His friend James came into the factory. He whispered to Henry, "Your wife and children were just sold at the market." "No!" cried Henry. Henry couldn't move. He couldn't think. He couldn't work. "Twist that tobacco," the boss poked Henry. Henry twisted tobacco leaves. His heart twisted in his chest. So this is Henry finding out that his wife and his children were sold. And because they were sold, he will never see them again. They're going to be forced to work somewhere else. At lunchtime, Henry rushed to the center of town. A large group of slaves was tied together. The owners shouted at them. Henry looked for his family. "Father! Father!" Henry watched his children disappear down the road. Where was Nancy?